Why are the playoffs better at Boston Pizza? Because we've optimized our sports bar experience by studying in-depth analytics, starting with our new BP winged ribs, currently leading all apps in wings above replacement, and deep-fried pickle wedges, an early favorite for the unanimous #1 overall pickle. And of course, the advanced stats darling and leader in pints per game, the new Beer Mosa. Catch the playoffs at Boston Pizza, powered by Fanalytics.
Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live, your go-to source for everything hockey. Live every weekday at noon Eastern.
And that, my friends, is the way life is meant to be lived. Hook that into my veins for the next 2 months. The Stanley Cup playoffs, night 1 in the books. Welcome into Daily Faceoff Live. It's a Tuesday, April 18th edition. He's former NHL netminder Mike McKenna, current Daily Faceoff analyst, and this is Daily Faceoff Live presented by Betano.ca. 19 plus, please play responsibly. The game starts now at Betano.ca. Mike, what'd you make of opening night?
Pretty physical, eh, Frank? Like, these teams all look like they wanted it, and it looked like it was fast-paced. They probably forgot there were referees on the ice, and we were treated to a couple of great overtimes, an expected score with the Boston-Florida game, and plenty of action, man. I thought it was massively entertaining on the ice.
As it always is, the Stanley Cup playoffs never, ever disappoint. Let's throw 2 minutes and 30 seconds up on the clock, and let's dive in. Which moment for you stood out the most from game one?
Well, I really think it was the Dumba Pavelski hit in this game between the Minnesota Wild and the Dallas Stars. Minnesota goes on to win this game 3-2. There's a huge hit by Dumba midway through that takes out Joe Pavelski of the Dallas Stars. And you can see here, initially there was a major call on this play, Frank. It was taken back after video review. It was determined that it was not a hit to the head. There was a minor roughing call on Dumba and a roughing on Domi for coming in and challenging him after this hit. I tell you what, though, Frank, I didn't like the hit. There's not going to be any discipline, it looks like, from the Department of Player Safety. Our own Matt Larkin has a piece at Daily Faceoff explaining why that is the case. I thought it was late. Now, there's a little grace period here. You got about a half second to make a hit, but the reason why I thought it was dirty was that Dumba can see Pavelski release the puck, and then he makes the decision to throttle him. So I understand why, though. You're in a playoff series and you want to set the tone. So if you're Matt Dumba and you're probably willing to take a 2-minute penalty to risk that in this type of situation. So that really jumped out for me, aside from the actual scores on the ice. How about you?
Yeah, and look, Matt Dumba's made a living being a legitimate kamikaze pilot going through the neutral zone on any given night. So this is nothing new from him. I personally don't have any issue with the hit. I think it's unfortunate, the result, and seeing Joe Pavelski's head bounce off the ice. And I think that raises some larger questions for me about if Joe Pavelski is missing a significant period of time. And Pete DeBoer said, quote, he's not confident that Pavelski will be ready for game 2 as the Stars try and even this series on home ice. You know, that team really hinges on that top line. And so if he's not available, then I think that certainly changes the dynamic of the series and could certainly swing things in the favor of the Minnesota Wild, because I thought this series was pretty close to begin with. However, what stood out from me on night one was the Edmonton Oilers blowing 2-0 and 3-1 leads in the third period. And you think back to last season, and you think back to the last time when these two teams met in the playoffs last year, the Oilers really, they beat themselves on a number of occasions. And you could make the argument, if you're an Oiler fan sitting here today, saying, oh, well, the referees were the ones who changed game 1. No. The Oilers led the league, I think, in the first half of this season in beating themselves. And they opened up the door on one too many occasions last year against the LA Kings. And look, I know it's one game. You don't want to overreact, Mike. But here's what I'll say. If you open the door in the same manner for the Kings this time around, this LA team is significantly better than last year, and it's going to bite you.
I don't disagree, and I especially think early in the series, Frank, to give the Kings a game with Kevin Fiala maybe back in the mix later in this series, that's not a good thing. The Oilers have to come out better in game 2 and take that to be able to get it to 1-1, because they don't want to go into 6 or 7 games against the Kings if they can help it.
Yeah, they just had some immature moments, I think, in terms of a team that should
Yeah.
be past some of that. So, 4 more series kick off tonight, Mike, in night 2 of the Stanley Cup playoffs. And one of them is a trendy upset pick. The Winnipeg Jets, the 8 seed, going up against the 1 seed in the West, the Vegas Golden Knights. What do you make of this matchup? Are you on the Jets train in terms of giving them a shot to beat the Golden Knights in round 1?
Well, I'm a huge fan of Connor Hellebuck, and everybody thinks that that could easily be the big factor in the series, and it could. Connor Hellebuck's got a .921 save percentage in the Stanley Cup playoffs. He's had a great season. For me, Frank, he should be it's one of the top 5 players up for the Hart in terms of how important he is for his team in Winnipeg. But Vegas just has found ways to win all season long. The Jets have found ways to lose and be bad for long stretches. So if you're just hinging this on Hellebuck, I don't like it. Now, here's the thing. Vegas, they don't have a great power play, but they will have Mark Stone back for the power play. It'll be better with them. Where will this series be won? It's going to be the neutral zone because Vegas is one of the NHL's better rush teams. Winnipeg isn't great at giving up rush chances. And with Hellebuck's lateral movement being his only weakness, that's one thing that Vegas may be able to exploit. Vegas was 3-0-0 against Winnipeg in the regular season. Now, it's also been 4 months since they played, Frank. So I think if Vegas keeps it tight in the neutral zone, if Winnipeg allows them to come through, it should be Vegas' series. I have them in 5, but I do think it's going to be tight because of that Hellebuck factor. The thing for the Golden Knights to worry about, you don't know how Laurent Brossoit is going to face and how he's going to look against his old team in the Jets. They know him well, Frank.
They know him well, and he doesn't really have any playoff experience to speak of, right? So that's something to keep in mind as well. For me, I have the Golden Knights in 6, and I think the reason for that is I've consistently underestimated the Golden Knights at basically every turn this year. Beginning of the season, I was saying Logan Thompson in net. Not sure how well this team can do over a full 82-game season. Then Mark Stone goes down with injury for a significant chunk of time. They missed Jack Eichel for a stretch. You talked about the goalies too. They set an NHL record for 4 consecutive wins using 4 different goalies in net. No matter what's been thrown at them, they've always found a way to overcome that. And it's not just like they limped into the playoffs. They won the Western Conference. They held off the Colorado Avalanche and the Edmonton Oilers and all these other teams. And I'm saying, why would I sit here and continue to sleep on the Golden Knights? That's a mistake. And I also look at this Jets team and I say, I really liked how they played through the first couple months of the season. You know, as the calendar turned to 2023, they were right up there in the Central in terms of being one of the best teams. And then the wheels fell off. They were a completely average team down the stretch. And I understand the firepower that they have. I understand the goaltender that they have. I don't look at the sum of their parts and say that's a team that really keeps me awake at night and gives me nightmares if I'm the Vegas Golden Knights.
Yeah, I agree with you because it comes down to consistency. And I think Bruce Cassidy's system has instilled that in the Golden Knights. Even when they haven't been great analytically, they've managed to win games. And I think it's also a pretty big hat tip to the work Alex Petrangelo's done with Mark Stone out of the lineup. I think he's been the best player on Vegas. Keep an eye on him.
Yeah, I really had a tough time deciding what to do with Alex Petrangelo for my NHL awards ballots that were sent in on Monday. He was sort of right there in terms of breaking into the top 5, ended up falling just short. But this was arguably the best season of Petrangelo's career, which is saying something for a guy that's been in the Norris Trophy debate before, a career high of 54 points. Let's talk about the Hudson River rivalry. That gets underway tonight. An much anticipated first round series between the New York Rangers and the New Jersey Devils. All of the New York tri-state area hockey mutants will be coming out to watch this one. And Mike, when you look at this series and really how close it is, to me, this was the hardest first round series to pick. I think there's so much to like about both of these teams. You've got the top end talent in New York, Patrick Kane and Vladimir Tarasenko added to that mix with Chris Kreider and Mika Zibanejad, and go down the list. It's a really special group of New York forwards, a Norris Trophy candidate in Fox on the back end. And then in net, you've got arguably, outside of Linus Ullmark this season, the best goaltender in the NHL in terms of building a franchise around an Igor Shesterkin. It's a coin flip between him and Ilya Sorokin. And all of that said, I took the Devils in 7 games because I'm thinking the Devils and their speed is going to be a lot for New York to handle.
I love this series. I love the teams involved in this series. I love the storylines. I just think that this is primed to be the most entertaining. And having played in that rivalry between the Rangers and the Devils before myself, man, it's going to be bonkers. Like, the atmosphere is going to be unbelievable. Now, this is where I think I picked the Rangers in 7 games. Okay, so I think this is going to be a long series as well. The thing is that Devils, they're so good 5-on-5, Frank. Like, when you look at the expected goals of these two teams head to head, it goes 60% in favor of the Devils. They possess the puck like crazy. I think you're really going to see how good Nico Hischier is defensively in shutting down those top players at 5-on-5 for the Rangers. But the Devils simply cannot end up in the penalty box because that power play for the Rangers is deadly. If you're going to give Zibanejad and Panarin chances, it's going to end up in the back of your net. I think the Rangers are probably a little bit loose defensively for my like when it comes to the Devils breaking through and getting chances on the rush. But the Rangers still have Shesterkin. And I like Shesterkin over Vanacek. Vanacek has a lot to prove in these playoffs, Frank. I think this is going to be a great 7-game series. It's going to go back and forth. Each team has their own little niche of the sport that they're better at. And I think it's going to come down to that. Whether it's a 5-on-5 game or a special teams game, it's going to tip in favor of either of these clubs.
So when you talk about the Rangers and how loose they are defensively, I think that's a 2-part problem for me. They don't have a shutdown line, and they don't really have the shutdown D pair that really makes you think that they can, combat a Devils offense, especially one that plays so well in transition. It's really close. This is the series that I had the least confidence in picking, and I could honestly see it going either way. I could even see the Rangers, if they, get out to an advantage, making quick work of this series as well. But ultimately, I've got the Devils in 7. You've got the Rangers in 7. Mike, we'll talk about the Tampa Bay Lightning and Toronto Maple Leafs coming up with our guy, Jay Rosehill. And we'll also touch on the Colorado Avalanche and Seattle Kraken in our inbox question coming up. But first, wanted to touch on some really big news that came out Monday just as our show was ending. And that is Brad Treliving will not be returning as general manager of the Calgary Flames. He was the 4th longest tenured general manager in the NHL. 9 years at the helm of the Calgary Flames. Don Maloney takes over as the new president of Hockey Ops, former general manager of the Arizona Coyotes. And it was interesting to me, Mike, that the Flames did not name a GM in the meantime. Maloney will be taking over as that interim for now. And I was thinking, man, it strikes me as strange because Craig Conroy has been right there and done all of the work and is extremely well-liked and well-respected in that organization. I'd imagine he will have a real opportunity to hold that post. But for me, the other thing that looms large is what happens with Daryl Sutter. It seems like for now, Sutter, with 2 years left on his extension that was signed before the season started, will be back as Flames coach. And it seems like he's won the power struggle because the decision to bring back Daryl Sutter, I'm told, is a big reason why Brad Treliving is no longer with the Calgary Flames. What do you make of this mess, and how do you put this back on the rails if you're the Flames, knowing that there were also multiple players that expressed their frustration and anger with Daryl Sutter in exit interviews last week? If the coach is coming back, I get that you can't have the inmates running the asylum, but in some ways, when you think about how this is all going to play out, it's really the Flames are still in a tough spot with a lot of hard decisions to make.
Yeah, well, I mean, you hire a GM and you're supposed to let that person do the job and they can decide on who the head coach is. And that's obviously not what's happened with the Calgary Flames. Simple as that, man, because you look at everything around this and Sutter shouldn't be back. That's just the bold reality of this. You listen to the comments from the players, the fact that Brad Treliving's now left. Who's going to come in as GM? They better make that decision quick here, Frank, because guess what? You're going to have to figure things out in a hurry, right? Lucic and Lewis are gone. Those are 2 favorites of Sutter's. Do they bring them back? Does Sutter get to make decisions on the roster? I mean, for me, that's a great chance to speed them up and bring in some youth. They have great young players in Pelche, Coronado, Phillips, Zari that can all come in, but they're also going to have to figure out their goalies, Frank. Like, you got Markstrom 3 years left at $6 million. Vladar's got a 2-year extension that kicks in at 2.2. And they got a guy in the American League, Dustin Wolf, who doesn't belong there, Frank. He's been the best goalie in that league for 2 years, a .932 save percentage this year, got his first start recently against San Jose, won the game. There's things that have to happen in Calgary for a roster that's pretty good. And they got a coach that the players, I don't think, want to play for. I don't know what's going on there, but they got to figure it out, man. And the hard part is they've already made their bed.
Yeah, they have. If you flash that graphic up there again, the other complicating factor is the salary cap. They basically are at the cap, have players that they still need to sign, and more importantly, have big decisions to make with players who are entering the final year of their deals. Tyler Toffoli, Elias Lindholm, expensive players, Noah Hannafin. How does this all fit together, and who wants to stay and who wants to go, knowing that this is the path that they might go down? Here's the only exclamation that I'll put on the end of this Flames conversation is, with Don Maloney and whoever is the next general manager, even though Brad Treliving is gone, I'm still not convinced that Darryl Sutter is going to be the head coach on opening night. He's just won, it seems like, the power struggle for now. So exclamation point on for now. Let's get to the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Tampa Bay Lightning with their game one that kicks off tonight in our All 32. That's right. Pleased to welcome in Jay Rosehill for the All 32, which is brought to you by Boston Pizza. Visit your local Boston Pizza to check out their new Fanalytics, including new items powered by Fanalytics. Jay Rosehill from Leafs Morning Take, part of the Nation Network. You can catch him and Nick Alberga every day of the week, Monday through Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern. These guys have a boatload of fun breaking down the Leafs all season long. And Jay, when you think about what it's like to enter this sort of, pressure cooker cauldron, when it comes to the Toronto Maple Leafs stepping into Scotiabank Arena for game one and all that's riding on the line, knowing that you need to have success and breakthrough finally, how would you manage that from a player's perspective?
Well, I think they got to stay in their bubble. We know the pressure cooker that it is and all the distractions that come outside, but those guys need to understand that, going into this, it's the best time of year. Mike can attest to that. You go into that locker room and, we talked about on our show, the new hats and the undergear and hoodies are rolling around and everyone's kind of rallied around. You go into your little bubble of, okay, guys, all the work is done. All the preparation is done. We've got what we got. Now we're rolling forward. And you just got to do that within your locker room, within that group, and not pay attention to any of the outside distractions. You can't pay attention to heavy hitters like Frank Saravalli, not picking them to win the series against all odds. I think he's betting with his heart and not his head, but things like that, you just got to not pay attention to and move forward with the group that you got.
Hey, Rosie, I just want to check to make sure over your shoulder you can see this beautiful Norfolk Admirals jersey hanging out here. Look at that. 3 primary colors, 6 colors total on the jersey. That's what we shared together playing in the American League in the Tampa Bay Lightning organization. I got to ask you, man, I look at this lineup for the Maple Leafs and, there's a lot of moving parts, I think, even amongst the forward lines. And you look at the centermen, you've got Matthews, O'Reilly, Achari, Kampf. They seem kind of set as the top 4. But Tavares and Lafferty can also draw in at center if you need that as well. Do you think that Sheldon Keefe is going to do a bit of mixing and matching as this series progresses with his forward lines?
Yeah, and I think that all signs point to him doing that. There was a bit of frustration with, the fan base, in the last few months of the season because there was so much of a blender of lines. I mean, guys weren't playing with their same guys for more than a few games, if that. And, they were going 11-7 on the forwards and D for quite a while to finish up. And a lot of people were questioning that, saying, how are these guys supposed to get used to each other? But now rolling into the playoffs, whatever happens here, I think that it very well could benefit them to be able to have so many different players be familiar with each other. There's no one that's been set in stone for the last 82 games, and if that's broken up, they're going to be completely lost. So I think at the end of the day, that could benefit them, having so many guys that could be utility guys moving around from position to position and line to line. At the end of the day, I think that if they do need to shuffle things up, it could end up being a saving grace for them.
So Jay, I love that you were able to poke fun at me, and it's not, the pick is not with my heart. It's actually with my head, knowing that this Leafs team has not broken through. I've picked the Leafs in each of the last 3 playoff runs. They're close to setting an NHL record for consecutive first-round losses. Until they break through, I'm just not picking the Leafs. I know you picked the Leafs in this scenario, and certainly understand it, because just about from every metric possible to look at from this season, the Leafs are well positioned to win this series. But yet, in some of the biggest moments in years past, either your stars have not come up with a big goal, your power play has wilted as the series has gone on. What is one thing that you need to see from this Toronto Maple Leafs team in order to finally bust through this series?
I think it's just a well-rounded confidence within the group that they've been lacking in the past. I mean, you watch them in the past and they come out to win 5-0 against Tampa, and they're an immature group that isn't very well-rounded, and it kind of goes to their head. And as soon as they face some adversity after that, I mean, everyone, it's just, you can see it, it's palpable on the ice. They're looking at each other to who's going to do this, and they're panicking and they're gripping their sticks, and they just weren't well-rounded enough. And now I think with their goaltending, I believe is in as good a place as it's ever been, even without Murray in the net. I'm okay with that. The leadership qualities of Ryan O'Reilly, I think, just takes them over the top. And then they've got some grit. They've got some jam. I just think that they're more well-rounded and more mature. They've got that experience of the past behind them, the players that were part of it. And I think they're ready to actually put the foot on the throttle and get through the first round. And I think everything they've showed this year has shown that. I think it's a more successful year than last year, regardless of them being a couple points shy. I believe they're a better team.
Yeah, there's no doubt that this group has what it takes to exercise those demons. We'll see if they can actually do that. This has been the All 32 with Jay Rosehill from Leafs Morning Take. Like I said, catch them every day, Monday through Friday, throughout the Maple Leafs playoff run at 11 a.m. Eastern as part of the LeafsNation.ca. Thanks so much, Jay. This has been the All 32, powered by Boston Pizza and their new Fanalytics menu. All right, Mike, time for our daily face-off inbox question of the day. Hashtag AskDFO. We'd be happy to take your questions. And to put a bow on some of our playoff preview for round one, what is the chances that you're giving the Seattle Kraken to knock off the defending Cup champ Colorado Avalanche?
Well, my wife has a mathematics degree from St. Lawrence University, so I asked her to put together an algorithm for this, Frank, and she came up with a 23% chance for the Seattle Kraken.
23%.
That's actually a complete lie. That's actually a lie. I'm lying. That's what I came up with, an arbitrary number. Bottom line, dude, the Kraken just love to trade chances. They can score like crazy. You don't want to do that against the Colorado Avalanche. I think the Avalanche has better goaltending, and I also think that power play for Colorado is just deadly, man. And so that's been a sore spot for the Kraken all year long. But you know what? They also have a little bit of juice on their side in making the playoffs this year. Crazier things have happened, Frank, but I think it's firmly in the Avalanche's favor.
Yeah, the season series number is what stands out to me. 0-1-2 for the Colorado Avalanche. That means the Kraken went 2-0-1 against the defending champs. I'm going to give it a 13% chance. So a little bit lower than you. I picked the Avs in a sweep. I think you see the way the Avs are cooking. And by the way, you see the Stars and the Wild beat the heck out of each other in game one. And that was the Avs' motivation to win in that makeup game on Friday and grab that Central Division. It meant that you got to avoid either one of those two teams in the first round, which is certainly going to make them better for wear and tear as the playoffs go along. Be careful what you wish for in the Seattle Kraken. They've exceeded just about every expectation to this point this year, making the playoffs in their second year of existence. However, I think there's going to be a little bit of just happy to be here vibes in Seattle once you get there for game three. Maybe they can take a game. I don't see much more than that for an Avs team that is ready and cooking with gas. Let's get to Tyler Yaremchuk and our Betano.ca daily bet segment. Tyler, I know you had the Oilers trying to vanquish some of those game one woes that they've had in series past, and God, they just gagged on it hard with 17 seconds left.
17 seconds away from a perfect betting night last night. So close. We did hit our shot prop parlay with Kopitar and Kotkaniemi. So we did finish up money because that parlay paid up a nice plus 160. Yesterday, though, little trend watch in terms of NHL betting on Betano. 3 unders in the 4 games and 2 underdogs got victories. So I'm going to try to use that logic. And there's one game I am eyeing up both of those things over at Betano, Betano.ca. I'm taking the Winnipeg Jets at plus 130 on the money line. Simply put, it's the Connor Hellebuck effect. That guy played a ton of hockey down the stretch, but now he's had a nice little rest period here. Connor Hellebuck should be at his absolute best in this hockey game. And you look back over his last 5 games, he's only allowed 7 goals in his last 5 starts. That is absolutely bananas. On the other side of this matchup, Laurent Brossoit has only allowed 8 goals in his last 5 starts. That is also absolutely bananas. I am rolling with the Jets, and then I'm also going to throw a unit on the under 5.5 at -110. And then for a shot prop parlay, 2 players I am eyeing up. It's Nino Niederreiter of the Winnipeg Jets. He has hit this in 6 of his last 7 games. And Arturi Lehkonen of the Colorado Avalanche. He missed a month, came back, boom, hit his shot prop in back-to-back games. He should be leaned on pretty heavily as well with Gabriel Landeskog not playing. I love both these shot props. Play them together, +135. And also the Jets and the under. Frank, 3 plays on a little Tuesday night Stanley Cup playoffs.
Yeah, speaking of unders, I was shocked to see that Carolina Islanders game was under 6.5. I was like, that just felt like easy money. And this line feels a little odd to me in terms of you siding with the Jets. Like, they're the 8 seed going against the 1. How is it possible that it's only +130?
Connor Hellebuck effect.
Yeah, I guess. That just makes me feel like if I was going to play, I'd be going with the Vegas Golden Knights in that case. We'll see. It'll be interesting. Love to watch this playoff action. So good. And that brings us to garbage time, Mike. And you mentioned power plays and what a significant advantage the Avs might have against the Kraken. How about power plays in general on opening night of the Stanley Cup playoffs? Of the 19 goals that were scored on Monday, 9 came on the power play, and it basically fueled the comeback for the LA Kings, of course, not just to tie the game late, but also to win the game in overtime as well. It feels like every time you turned around, there was a pivotal power play that took place. You said earlier in the show that you thought maybe the players forgot that they call penalties in the playoffs. I would suggest look at the data over the last number of years. Games 1, 2, 3, and 4 of a series, there's more penalties called then, especially in the first round, than there are in the regular season. It's games 5, 6, and 7 of a series that referees traditionally put their whistles away. So perhaps players should be a little bit more careful because you saw the power of the power play in a couple of game 1s.
Yeah, bang on, man. There were 31 power plays last night in 4 games. Like, Carolina took 4 penalties. I think Rod Brindamore almost blew a gasket 18 times, man. Every time I turned around, the camera was on him screaming at the referee. And it's like, guys, they're instructed to make sure that they call this the exact same way as the regular season to begin a series. And then the players figure it out as it goes along in the series that, hey, we can't, just because our emotions are higher on the ice, you can't go bananas out here. And the referees are not going to let it go. So I thought, even in that Dallas-Minnesota game afterwards, Pete DeBoer was asked, and he was really good about it. He said, hey, we've got the best officials in the world. I thought he handled it really well with the Pavelski hit that was on Dumba. And even last night, I think the referees and the officials deserve some credit. Like, there was a goal in the Boston-Florida game where the puck landed on Alex Lyon's pad. It was free. The easy call would have been to blow the whistle. And the refs let it go until they knew exactly what was happening. DeBrusk managed to knock it in just before and grab the goal there. So I thought the officiating's been good. The players are the ones that have to realize this is just like the regular season for now. You will take penalties, and you can't let other teams back in it. Look at Edmonton. They gave LA 6 power plays last night. They're way too good of a skating team to do that. So we will see the teams adjust, Frank, but it's worth keeping in mind that the officials are trying to call this the same way as the regular season.
It's fascinating that they also got it right, I think, with rescinding the major penalty on the Pavelski hit from Dumba.
Great.
Just comes back around. Pete DeBoer basically ends up losing a playoff series on a poorly called major penalty. The rule change goes into effect as a result of that and ends up basically, in this way, hurting the Dallas Stars, but in some ways they get the call right. So certainly interesting to keep an eye on those stats with regards to the power play as these series ratchet up. 4 more on the books tonight. Can't wait, Mike. That'll do it for Daily Faceoff Live. We'll be back 12 noon Eastern on Wednesday. Until then, enjoy the games, everyone.
Thanks for tuning in to Daily Faceoff Live. Make sure you hit the subscribe button to never miss an episode.